Well, all right. Welcome to Senator Right. This is a program where an ordinary person talks about the cultural, political, and daily life challenges facing Americans. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, there's 5 reasons that I think we're having problems with this COVID issue, other than the virus itself. Obviously, the virus is bad news. But everybody in a situation like this, they want to blame somebody, and there's no shortage of blaming going on. A lot of people, of course, blame the president. They blame the president for just about everything. But though the president takes some fault, definitely because he's in charge, there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that everybody just wants to point toward one thing. They want an answer. This is the reason why. Congress didn't do the bill fast enough. The president was denying things. I remember when Obamacare first came out, everybody blamed Obama because the website didn't work. Well, not necessarily. But anyway, I think there's 5 reasons that this thing has had an issue getting off the ground and helping people out. The first thing is the way our emergency preparedness system works is it works by region. If you look in FEMA, for example, and through most of the emergency preparedness for America, it works in regions because we are so large. You look at something as an example that happens in Florida. So Florida, Georgia are impacted by a hurricane. And all kinds of things happen. Their electrical goes down, roofs are blown off of buildings and everything. And then it doesn't take any time. And if you're out on the road, like maybe you're a truck driver, you start seeing trucks from Ohio come in. They're electrical trucks, and they're coming down to Florida to help folks put electrical back together. And that's kind of the way America works is that we draw America is so large, we draw resources from other areas within America, and we surge them to the area that's affected. And it works quite well. Well, right now, for the first time in history, every single state is in a state of emergency. So when you try and handle things by a region, then and it affects the entire American country, all the people, all that land, all that space and time. You're just asking for problems. It's not going to work. And I'm not sure that we could ever be prepared for something like this that affects the entire, all of the country at one time. The number 2 thing is government bureaucracy. And this is something that affects us constantly. But in this case, it affected our response from organizations like the CDC. And the CDC and the laws that we have, the CDC was the only organization that it would allow itself, as an example, to develop tests. Initially, the states had to send tests to the CDC. They wouldn't allow the states to do their own test. They had strict rules on how testing was to take place and how things were supposed to be developed. And to President Trump's one of the good things that he did, to his credit, is that somebody told him, and somehow he figured it out and signed some order or something and allowed them to streamline that. And then eventually the CDC figured out, hey, let's get these products down to the states so that people can get tested. This is nothing new. Our bureaucracy stops us all the time from fixing things in an expeditious manner. Things that, it almost seems like we would not allow people in the private sector to come out and help us. I think they tried to get them to help in the beginning, but within private enterprise, they develop things quite rapidly because they do not typically have to deal with these types of rules. So Government bureaucracy was another issue. Another issue was reliance on foreign products. Maybe people don't know that there's only one. Now, there are several companies that manufacture the masks that are needed to protect people from COVID. But they don't know that there's only one major manufacturing outfit, and that's in America, and that's 3M. Now, there are other small manufacturers, but all of a sudden 3M had to ramp up for the entire country to give it masks that it needed. It could not do it. We could not get products in from foreign countries because they were like, hey, we need to take care of ourselves as this thing progressed. Initially, people were giving things like America and Canada gave some of our masks and PPE and stuff to China as an example to try and keep it over there and maybe stop it from spreading. But eventually people, a lot of the governments were like, hey, we need it. And then there's raw materials that are needed to make these products. And these raw materials are not made in America, a lot of them. They could be made in America, but over the years, people have said, we don't want that here. And so those products are imported. So even if 3M or other companies wanted to make products faster, they may not be able to get the raw materials. So if anything, we've learned that our reliance on foreign governments, foreign areas to make products for us, it's not going to work. I mean, you could imagine if this had been a war or something of that nature, and we had to come up with, with our own products, to fight a war. So, wow. And then the fourth area is really federal government, state government, and city governments were just not ready. And I'll give you a couple of examples. And this is not strictly about those leaders. It's about priorities. So just as an example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, years ago when he was governor of California, he had started a pandemic stockpile. And eventually, after the stockpile was made, it was defunded by the state, and everything was auctioned off. And so California did not have a pandemic stockpile, even though someone saw the need at a previous time and had built it. The same thing happened in New York. Michael Bloomberg, who just ran for president, he had actually started purchasing ventilators and other products to allow the city to be prepared for a pandemic. And they were all sold off and auctioned off. So, you look at a place like New York City, which is where the center of the epidemic is, which, probably, you can't predict where this thing is going to be, but these major cities, they are probably, those cities and the state governments definitely need to have stuff ready. You look at the federal government, they're looking at that regional response. So if you look at what the federal government had on hand, they probably had plenty. If this was in 4 states in the Northeast, they could have sent plenty of ventilators and plenty of everything. But when it's across the entire country, they didn't have enough. So we were just not ready overall for something like this to happen. And then the fifth thing is the American people themselves. For one, I didn't believe this was as serious as it was. This thing started happening, and they said, no, you can only have 10 people or more gathering. And then they were like, no church services. And I was like, hey, you don't get to tell me if I can go to church. Now, I don't even go to church, but I'm just saying, if I did, I was like, you can't tell me not to go to church, or you can't tell me where I can go. But the fact is that a lot of us were thinking that it wasn't as bad as it was. we didn't understand for whatever reason, or didn't want to believe that this thing took 12, 14 days. Somebody could be carrying that and not even be sick. So a lot of people thought it was like the flu, and it wasn't. And so many people, they just didn't, they felt like, hey, we've got to be free. We've got to be able to do what we want. And so, boom, they did what they want. And even today, there was a shooting in California a few days ago. People were having a party and a bunch of people got shot. And you're like, why are you guys having a party? We're supposed to be sheltered. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff going on even today. Even everybody should know by now that this thing is serious business. All right, so that's the 5 reasons, and I will be right back with the wrap-up. All right, welcome back to the wrap-up for Senator Wright. So most of us, we want to have something to blame for a problem. Can't the doctor tell me what's wrong? Is it a lung disease? What is it? Why isn't it raining? It's climate change. We have to have something to blame things on. And what's the easiest thing to blame? Find it. Blame them. There's a lot of blame going on in the world right now. But one of the things we have to realize, I believe, is that there's a system. Everything is a system of things. And you cannot blame... sometimes you can blame one thing, one person, one organization, one something. But most of the time, it's a system gone wrong. It's multiple things at different levels that are an issue. And you have to, in the end, after something goes wrong, you have to have some type of an after action review. You have to put things together in retrospect and see, hey, we did this, that was the wrong thing to do. We didn't tell people fast enough. We didn't take this serious enough. We didn't have these resources. Why didn't we have this? And then you have to make some decisions on priorities and funding for later on. You cannot always just blame one thing. And then the American people, we want to be free, and a lot of us need to take responsibility for this problem on our own. The fact that we may not be eating right, we're not out walking and being physically fit, and we have underlying conditions. I'm not blaming this on anything in particular, but just Americans in general. We're finding out right now that a lot of Americans have died. More per capita, it appears that we're more susceptible to this disease. Well, there's got to be something more to that. It can't just be that it's Americans. Maybe it's our lifestyle. Maybe there's other things that we need to change. Maybe we're too sedentary. Something's different about us. And so we have to take a look after this thing's over, this thing is over, and find out if there's something else to this other than just a virus. That's basically all I got for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you didn't, don't. And if you feel like you want to subscribe for future videos, do that too. Have a great day.